Okay, Oscar fans, I'm Daniel Montgomery from Gold Derby here with Susan Wloszczyna, Joyce Eng, and Tom O'Neill. At this point, we've seen most of the contenders for Best Picture, including Parasite and Jojo Rabbit, which opened theatrically in recent weeks. So which ones can really win it? Which ones are at the top of that list of potential winners? Susan, give us your list of titles that you think are really in it to win it as Best Picture winners at this point.
I think the ones that might stand out more are the more fun, fanciful ones that still kind of have an edge to them. And I would include in that two that just recently opened, or Parasite, which is amazing. The one problem that has is that it's also South Korea's foreign language contender, and it might just win that, and it could be something like Roma, where they feel it's already been rewarded. And also Jojo Rabbit, which I think some critics kind of had problems with mixing Nazi whimsy with World War II and some serious issues. But I think audiences are going to gravitate toward that too.
So what's number one on your list? Like what are you currently predicting?
Well, I'm currently predicting Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, because I did see The Irishman, and it's a way different Scorsese film than something like Goodfellas or, even Wolf of Wall Street. It's not that snap, crackle, pop thing that he does. And I think, that's going to surprise a lot of people, because this is about men who are horrible. As they grow older, they don't learn anything, they don't change anything, they just think they run the world, and they learn otherwise when they're all alone in a old folks home and nobody's there to really love them. So that's about it.
Let's bring in Tom O'Neill. What are you thinking about the state of the Best Picture race at this point?
I think Irishman can win. I think Hollywood can win. Parasite, Jojo. And after that, I think it's a question of what films can get momentum to do it, because it's often a real race. If you remember the year of Zero Dark 30 and Les Miserables and Lincoln and what ended up, and Argo, that was all about momentum. Argo had the front runner position early on, lost it, and it was probably the most competitive year that we've ever seen in recent times at the Oscars. Yes, I mean, you could say competitive Moonlight versus La La Land in a different way, but I mean, throughout the year, the zigzagging up and down was thrilling to watch. If one of these other rivals, like 1917, which we haven't seen yet, all of a sudden breaks loose from the pack and takes off, that's possible. But I think, Irishman has the big epic sweep, but it's 3.5 hours. It's a slog here and there. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is a big sprawling movie too that has some dull spots, but boy oh boy, if I was a voter, it would be Parasite. And I think that's the fascinating wild card this year, because they love art house flicks at the Oscars. They almost went with Roma last year. They have gone with Moonlight and some of these smaller movies in recent years, like Shape of Water. But Parasite would be a real reach, but it's got the problem Susan's mentioning, is that it will likely win Best Foreign Film. I think he's going to win Director, and I think it's got Foreign Film locked up and Director, because they've been going for those art house directors consistently for the last 5 or 6 years. I don't know, Daniel, what do you think?
I think Parasite. It's probably an even tougher sell than Roma was, just sort of on paper, because it's, I remember Roma. It was a sort of a memory film about the political history and the family history of Alfonso Cuarón. It was a very personal film, and Parasite is more of a genre film. It feels kind of like South Korea's Get Out in a sense. It's very much about class, which is a theme that is going to resonate, I think, nowadays. But it would probably be the oddest Best Picture winner of all time. But at the same time, Tom, you loved it, and I loved it, and when a film can bridge that gap between the sort of the cineasts and the populists, that's when kind of amazing Oscar things can happen. So
no, absolutely. That's what everybody keeps saying about Parasite is, yes, I think that this could win Best Picture, but Parasite's my favorite. So let's bring Joyce in here. Joyce, can Parasite win?
I would love it if Parasite won it. It's my favorite film of the year so far.
Hey, everybody listening to this and watching.
Probably
ditto favorite film so far this year.
And I do think it can win. There's no real front runner at this point where you feel like it's a lock. There's this is kind of the best time of the year where there's still a lot of contenders in play, and you can just kind of make arguments for everybody. But I think what we've seen, especially over the past decade with the preferential ballot, is that when it comes to Best Picture, you need to inspire passion. So a lot of people love Parasite, and you should, or not, it's not a necessity, but if you're also socially important in some way, there's a messaging behind your movie too, that helps. And you looked at some the past Best Picture winners this decade, some of them have fit one or two of those molds. And I think two films right now fit both of them, and they're Parasite, which is this brilliant, Black comedy about class hierarchy and capitalism, and Jojo Rabbit, which is very divisive, but it's also incredibly timely, and that also has a lot of passion behind it. And there's a bunch of critics who love it, and a bunch who hate it. So if you look at any scores on Rotten Tomatoes or Metacritic, there's a huge gap. But I feel like this is kind of, not to say they're the same film, but I feel like it's kind of, it could inspire the same passion behind it that Green Book did last year. So I think if those two can kind of capitalize on their messaging and the passion, they could win. But again, we've already said, Parasite, it's kind of anchored down by the International Feature Film Award too. So they could feel like they took care of there already.
Yeah, and Jojo Rabbit is an interesting case. The reviews are sort of mixed depending on where you look. On Metacritic, the score is in the 50s, which is fairly mixed. On Rotten Tomatoes, I think it was closer to 80. Which suggests that some of those mixed reviews probably lean closer to mixed positive than mixed negative. But it has an A cinema score, which means that the audiences who saw it on opening weekend loved it, which is a good sign for it. It won the People's Choice Award, obviously, at the Toronto Film Festival, which has always been a good sign, especially in recent years for an Oscar contender. Green Book won that last year, 3 Billboards the year before. So even if it's not a Best Picture winner, it's going to be one of the top contenders. So it'll be interesting to see if the Academy is less divided than the critics are. It looks like all signs point to yes on that one, which might make this another one of those, critics versus the Oscars kind of situations.
And all the Gold Derby editors, Daniel, like yourself, currently have Jojo Rabbit winning Best Comedy Picture at the Globes. And I spoke to a Globe voter the other day, and he goes, wow, we really love Jojo Rabbit. In other words, just like they went with Bohemian Rhapsody last year for Best Drama Picture, which was absurd because it won Best Comedy or Musical Picture, right? But Stars Born and Bohemian were put over in that drama category. But it's going to get some awards traction there.
About Parasite, I didn't feel like I was watching a foreign film. It felt very familiar to me, even though, it's a different kind of, location and all that. But these people spoke to me. It wasn't like they were different than any other rich family versus poor family who take advantage of them. And it felt like something that almost anyone who has this kind of culture class, when it comes to wealth and who gets to, rule and who gets to have to deal with not having, like a gig economy and all this stuff. I mean, but it's not a lecture. It just feels like these people because they didn't seem foreign to me. They felt like you could meet, similar people in America right now. So it felt almost not like a foreign film to me. It didn't feel like I was not relating to it. And I think that helps it a lot.
Yeah, and also I love Daniel's analogy to Get Out because it does have a kind of a horror thriller aspect. One of the reasons we love this movie so much, all of us, is it does the horror analogy is actually, I think, a good one because what happens here is there are so many unpredictable plot twists, zigzags, that you don't know where this movie's going, and every time it takes one of these sharp turns, and you go, it's almost always, I think it always is, a fascinating twist that you say, I should have seen that coming, or it is logical that it goes there. Anyway, it's delightful. You walk out of it thinking, I've just seen a real movie. And it's populist in the fact that it's has these kind of horror thriller elements is a better word to it. But plus it's got defiance and rebellion that race through it. This is a story of a lower class South Korean family in Seoul who is worming their way into the lives of rich people, and all hell's going to break loose. And it's going to be stick it to the man. It's the triumph of the little people, or at least that's what they want. And that sense of inner rebellion, that sense of defiance is what fueled Three Billboards and many, many of the other great movies in recent years, is that we connect to that with audiences. We all feel that we're in some way some repressed people, even those of us living in Hollywood who are probably actually leading what is relatively a pampered life.
Yeah, and it's interesting to I think people should also know the kind of Korean backstory of the Oscar history, which is that South Korea has submitted more than 30 movies for consideration for foreign language film, now Best International Feature. It has never even been nominated for Best Foreign Film. And now we're in a situation where it could be a Best Picture nominee, a Best Picture winner, a Best Director winner for Bong Joon-ho, who is well known to American viewers because he directed Snowpiercer, which is a cult hit, and he did Okja on Netflix a couple of years ago. So he has established this track record, and now South Korea could not only get on the map for the first time, but kind of blow up the map.
I think it would be important, or I mean, I'm just hoping that like one of the actors could make it in, because that would be huge for them. It's kind of like how, Roma got 2 acting nominations last year, even though Roma didn't end up winning Best Picture. But I feel like the supporting races are kind of open enough that if people really get behind this film, they could nominate one of them. And like once we have that backing, I would feel more confident predicting it for Best Picture. It's still a long way to go, obviously, but I think if it could break through into acting, like a foreign language performance, which haven't been that many in acting in Oscar history in acting. So if it can do that, that would be huge for them.
Which performer do you think has the best chance of breaking in, Joyce?
I think the lead actor who plays the dad, Song Kang-ho.
Yes,
He's worked with Bong Joon-ho for years. Like they go way back. Like he's been in a bunch of his movies. I feel like he has the best chance, but I would love it if like all the actresses got nominated, because I thought they were all brilliant. So, but I feel like he probably has the best chance. Like it's a true ensemble film too.
Yeah, Song Kang-ho is he was in The Host for Bong Joon-ho, and he was in Snowpiercer as well. And he does seem to have the heart of this movie in the sense that, I want to give away as little about the film specifics as possible, but he has a couple of moments where he sort of carries that kind of that kind of the thrust of that class conflict and being a father who's trying to provide for his family with limited means, and all of the things that entails in terms of his struggle and his shame and the emotions that go into it. He really does come away, I think, as one of the highlights of it. So if there's going to be a Marina de Tavira of South Korea, it could be him.
I like too that no one's really the villain. They're all, tied to their circumstances and how they're, acting and things. And it's not like you feel for almost everyone, maybe not so much the rich wife mother, but she seems a little clueless, but I didn't, it's not like there's a one villain. The villain is their circumstances, where they live and where they came from, unfortunately, and how people are treated when they don't have money and when they do have money, and they don't see each other the way people do when they just meet and don't know anything about each other. So it's interesting to me how he plays that, because I felt for everyone almost. So
it'll be interesting to see how this plays in terms of the passion vote. It's going to have a lot of passion, and that's going to help it get into Best Picture, almost certainly. Whether it has also the consensus vote that it needs to win, which means you don't only need those number one votes from people who love it the most. You also need the people who aren't voting for it at number one to like it enough to put it second or third, because on the preferential ballot, that's going to factor into who wins. So it'll be interesting to see. We'll be tracking that movie and more as the weeks come. We'll be back with you next week to discuss where it stands in the Oscar race and where everything else stands in the Oscar race. And you can make your own predictions at goldderby.com. Thank you, Susan, Tom, and Joyce for joining me. And we will see you again next week.
Well done, everybody. Well done.
I usually have a timer set up so I know how long it's running, but I forgot. So I was like, let me just let that run a little bit longer to make sure it's
These can be short, long, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I love that we just spent the whole time talking about Parasite.
I know.
That's very telling.
The only movie
one we
that
all love.
Jojo are the only movies you feel personally about and are rooting for. No,
Right.
Parasite, man.
they take chances, and I love chances. I mean, A Beautiful Day in Neighborhood, I really enjoyed too, but it doesn't have like the wow factor. It's obviously a different, feeling of the
Do I still
movie.
have Tom in there? I feel like I should never predict him because he never gets in.
Oh, yeah.
No,
I mean, he's
you
in
should.
supporting this time.
I know.
What'll happen is that it'll be the film will be nominated for 8 Oscars, but not him. That's what usually happens.
The HFPA person that I was speaking to recently who was saying, Jojo, we really love and Parasite, we really love Parasite. He was also going on about, and this will surprise you, The Laundromat, which I have seen. It's on Netflix now, right? It's good. It's not great. It's not the movie. It is not going to be nominated for anything. It's just a good story. But it's got really surprising plot twists into it that you never see coming, some real shockers. And Meryl Streep, this unfolding performance that has surprise after surprise after surprise, and she just brings it all. It's a lead performance. Brings it all home at the end. That when PA said, don't listen to the reviews, we love it. And I did too. You love Meryl Streep's performance. I've got her number, I think, at number 1 to win. If I don't, I've got to move her up because, boy, don't underestimate Meryl Streep and don't underestimate those Golden Globe voters, but they're going to have less impact than normal because of the shortened Oscar season.
Yeah.
Well, they should be smart. Yeah.
Well, they won't impact nominations, but it'll impact winners, which is what usually happens.
I think if they're smart, they should submit Meryl lead at the Globes, because it's going to be much easier to get into Best Actress than it is to Best Supporting Actress at the Globes, just because musical comedy is so relatively thin. And of course, she's Meryl, and it's the Globes, so they'll love her no matter. They're going to nominate her for Big Little Lies too. So